This is another live radio link-up brought to you by the Government Communications, GCIS. It is, and it's a very good evening to you. Welcome to our broadcast this evening, brought to you courtesy of Government Communication and Information System, the GCIS, in partnership with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, as well as the National Prosecuting Authority. Those are two partners this evening, have been for the past couple of weeks, will be for the next coming weeks and months as well, and looking forward to that. This is the Let's Talk Justice, Live Your Rights show, as it happens every Thursday. Quite excited to be handling this one here as well. My name is Karabolans. As I always say, paying tribute to where you come from as a person, paying tribute to your roots. My roots are being a Setlogolo Sabapedi le Matebele, and Tabela Robalo and Namo, my Juinga Lorono, Rawamagalo, and Chile, Chimukasonyarena, Yona, we cliche to Akabaka Government Communication and Information System, the GCIS, Hamogo, Le Horoya, Toka, Le Cholochopele, Yamalao, Teo. That's the Justice and Constitutional Development. National Prosecuting Authority. That's the MPA kabokopana sugomgele nawe mlaleli kulehlelo lethu la namhlanje silethola ngabaga Government Communication and Information System, the GCIS, nomnyango we Justice and Constitutional Development kanye National Prosecuting Authority. Big ups to one of the gentlemen that's called me early on from a radio station saying, "Hey Garaba, you always say you'll be together with us ngesizulu, saying uzobanati kuze kusha uhora leshakalombili." He says to me, hey, it's actually wrong because the show is actually an hour, so it's not Shakalumbili, Uhora Lestup, I think he said. There we go, that's 7 o'clock. Having learned something, it's big ups to you for having done that, and I really, really appreciate it. You see, as South Africans, we tend to learn languages and we must teach each other, and this is also a platform to be able to understand some languages if you don't know them. And by so saying, I just want to invite you to be part of this show, and you can call us in and speak in any language of your choice. You can speak in Afrikaans or English. We're going to be hosting the show in those two languages. But in addition to that, there is a language or language groups, two of them that you can use, either Nguni or Sesotho languages. If you want to be part of the show, you're more than welcome to do that. Our number is a toll-free number, very easy one. It's 0800 142 446. So that's 0800 142 446. You're more than welcome to call on that number. It's a toll-free number if you're calling from a telecom line. Otherwise, use your cell phone, and in that way, we'll take your details down and call you back. If you're into social media, by the way, hook us up on Facebook at DOJCD, the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Otherwise, Twitter handles DOJCD_ZA. That's DOJCD_ZA. I love doing that, and my producers always look at me when I say that. Well, joining us in the studio this evening, quite excited because we're going to be talking about an issue that's very, very important. Extremely important for that matter. And we're seeing quite a lot of families actually going haywire, and quite a lot of families getting into battles because of this one thing. Either done or not done. So we're going to explore it. But let me just first introduce you to our listeners. Not our listeners, really, but our guest this evening coming from the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, Ms. Mpela Cecilia. She's in the studio, and it's a very good evening to you, Cecilia.
Good evening, Karabo, and thanks for inviting me.
All right, and also joining us, Cecilia as well, Kintate Kubega, Caleb. Caleb, thank you so much for having made time to come and chat to us this evening.
Thank you very much, Karabo. I'm very pleased to be here, and good evening to the listeners as well.
All right, so there we go. Those are our two guests this evening. What are we going to be talking about? You're probably wondering. Well, we're going to talk, like I said, it's an issue that's very, very important. Drawing up a will. Is it called a final testament as well? What is
yes, it is called a final testament.
There we go. So drawing up a will. We're seeing a lot of families, like I say, getting into battles because there was not a will drawn up, and siblings tend to fight each other because of the assets that's been left behind and so forth. So this is one of the ways that one can actually make sure that when they pass on, whatever they've left behind gets shared. I'm not going to say equally, but they know exactly what they want from what they've left behind, and obviously the state will definitely make sure that that's been done correctly. So drawing up a will, that's what we're talking about. You're wondering if your days, you're getting closer to, for instance, if you want to put it that way, wheel, you don't know how you can actually tune into this evening's program, and that's exactly what we're going here to talk about. So the objectives really of this program is to highlight the importance of drawing up a will, to clarify who is competent to draw up a will. O skebe be wa wela mo seraing sa gore o buisana le motho eleng gore ha se motsana pe wa go draw the will, for instance, because they might just trick you out of they might even take your staff, in fact, to start with. So we're going to be explaining the requirements of a valid will. We're going to be educating ourselves on the amendments of a will after divorce. That's one of the most important areas that we need to deal with. And finally, the role of the Interstate Succession Act of 1987, I beg your pardon. That's Act number 81 of 1987. That's all from me. Let me hand it over to our guest this evening. The ladies first. When Miss Cecilia is looking at me thinking, I'm going to go in first. You're definitely going to go in first.
Oh, no.
All right, Miss Cecilia, let's bargain will. All right, and I think a lot of us are taking it for granted. We almost know how to really key, but maybe let's just get into the details and explain exactly how to work a will. What makes up a will or a proper, valid, legit will?
Okay, thanks, Karabo. Actually, a will is what you call a testament. Mm-hmm. Yes, I can explain it in like layman's language. It can be called a wish list. Mm-hmm. That will be my wish on the day I die. Mm-hmm. Yes, a will is where you explain. It's a document where you explain how you want your assets to be bequeathed. Mm-hmm. If ever you've got assets, who do you want to benefit your assets?
Right.
Yes, and when drafting a will, that's where you get a chance to even appoint an executor. That's the person who you want to be there and to distribute, to administer your assets and distribute to your beneficiaries. Mm-hmm. Yes, and that executor must first make sure that he pays the debts that are going to be there at the time of your death, and afterwards the remaining, the residue, gets to be distributed to your beneficiaries.
All right, we're talking about an executor, which is one big phrase for people who are not exposed to legal terms, for instance, and maybe you might want to jump in there, Caleb, but just to explain to us what an executor is, what their role is, the qualifications they need to have. Can it be anyone? Member of the family, friend, who's an executor? Before you do that, I'm going to ask you to please pop in your headphones. I'll tell you why, because our listeners are going to be calling in now. They're quite excited to be here. You can do the same as well. So now, the executor, who is this person? What are they made up of? What should they have? Where are they coming from?
Okay. An executor is basically someone that would be appointed by what we call a testator. And this person is basically responsible for the administration of the estate, as Ms. Pilla has said. And among other things, the executor could be anyone from a family member, your spouse, your children, or anybody. But it mostly is someone that is trusted by the testator or testatrix. So it could be anyone. They do not necessarily have to have specific qualifications to do that. although in practice you do find that it gets to be regulated a bit by the prescripts that would be applicable at the time. For now, what is important is that an executor could be anyone that you so choose, and it obviously has to be someone that is said to be who's mentally sound, who's not under the age.
What about criminal records? Would it be acceptable to have somebody as an executor who's got a criminal record?
Well, it is not. It is not. Those would be the exceptions to who, or rather to who may not be an executor. Of course, here we're talking of a matter of trust. Right. This is when the deceased decides. The testator, decides to. It could happen that a criminal record is there at a later stage after, but you're not prevented as such to can nominate anyone you want.
All right, 0800 142 446, 0800 142 446. Hi, lokoro batlo go buisana le rona maitseweng a kajeno hantse re buisana ka ditaba tsa di wills. Hi, lokore, this is a matter of interest in your life. Perhaps you've been wondering how to go about it, and how do I go about putting up a will? Any kind of questions that you have, visitors coming from the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development who are willing to give us all the details. So 0800 142 446. That's 0800 142 446. Otherwise, you can hook us up on Facebook at the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. If you're into Twitter, you can hook us up by Twitter line, which is our Twitter handle at DOJCD_ZA, at DOJCD_ZA. I just want to mention that this is Radio Transformed. You could be hearing sounds in the background and maybe hearing mugs and coffees and something like that. You see, this is where radio is heading. Radio is no longer just audio only. We've got video cameras in the studio as we speak, and by so saying, you can actually go onto YouTube and check out some of the programs that we've had in the past and educate yourself and kind of see what happens in the studio. So if you're hearing sounds and voices and people laughing and people pulling booms and lights, and you might hear a light popping going off as well, don't worry about it. This is Transformation Radio, and it's changing as the years goes by. 22 after 6 o'clock, 0800 142 446. All right, let's talk about the requirements for a valid will. What is needed as requirements for a valid will? Any of you guys can jump into that one. Mrs. Cecilia is looking at that. Any of you guys can jump into that one.
Okay. Well, there's not really many requirements. It's a matter of age, which is 16 years or older, and it should be someone that is mentally capable. As I said, it's important that the person is mentally sound for it to
be valid.
Yes.
All right.
Someone who's not really mentally sound, it could give a bit of challenges.
I want to lose I don't want that, of course. Okay, but now let's the space where this thing is done.
Yes.
Where does it have to happen?
Yes.
When it does happen, are you under oath when you are drafting your will?
Okay.
Do you have to have the witness, or one person, or there needs to be? Let's talk about all those logistics as you're sitting there, and this is it. What is there, Mesilia? Come on, I think you need to jump into this one. Come on. All right, so
yes.
So let's talk about the type of environment and all other stuff.
Okay, first, before you must actually have assets. And as he said, you must at least be 16 or older, and you must be of sound mind. And yes, you must have witnesses.
How many witnesses do you have?
It has to be, the Act says it has to be 2 witnesses. And those witnesses must be 14 years or older, and those witnesses must be people who can testify in the court of law.
All right, 14 years or older, you say?
Yes.
So the Act does allow children to be witnesses?
Yes.
Okay.
As long as he's of sound mind and he can testify in the court of law, that person can be a witness in your will. That witness need not go through your will. He must
they just sit in?
Yeah, they just sit in. You can do the drafting, or you can ask someone to do the drafting for you. Someone who's got the know-how of drafting a will.
All right. As far as experience is concerned,
yes.
how often do we see batho ba maybe legal representation or legal practitioners? Do you think there's a high number of people approaching legal practitioners, or batho they are resorting to fellow colleagues, friends, or family members?
Actually, the practice, from what I've observed, we normally go to our financial advisors. We go to the banks. Yes, you can go to legal people who are lawyers or attorneys. Yes, and those are the people who can advise you on how to draft a will, because drafting a will is very technical.
Right.
Yes, and as Tate Kubeka has already explained, it has got requirements. So you cannot just, get anyone to draft a will on your behalf. It must be someone who's got the knowledge and experience of drafting a will.
All right, cool stuff. Let's go to the telephone lines quickly. I'm sure my listeners at this stage, they would like to know, they would like to have a question or two posed on air. 0800 142 446, going to Senegal, and we're chatting to Mhlatupa. Mhlatupa, Dumel. Aruto ho ena hore potso ha o ere.
Ke ne ke botsa nempela mo le ntate Kuila hore na ha ke kopane le lemona mme ana le bana ba hae ka thoko ne ka le hodima ho le jalo na ho a hlokahala hore bana ba hae ba kenye tsa bo wili ba tla hore ke kenye ba o leng ba ka pele le ba leloko
yeah, ke go potso re nyana hanyane fela Mhlatupa we utlwe potso ntate.
I think if I understand him correctly, he's saying can he include other members who are not his blood relatives, if he probably now is involved with someone else who has their own kids. I think if I understand it correctly, that's what he wants to find out.
Right, Mhlatupa ke yona potso e botsang gore o ka kenya batho ba ileng gore ha se bana ba gago directly like ba madi. Is that what you're saying, eh? All right, ke go bo mamelege mo radio nya hao re tla araba potso ya hao.
Dumela buti.
They're gone.
Oh,
they're listening by the radio.
Right. There is no prescribed way of how you should or who you should benefit. You benefit anyone that you would want to benefit under your will. So that means you can still benefit them under your will.
Okay, so they don't need to be related to you in any way whatsoever.
No.
If
can be
I can come in,
please.
Actually, it's nicer here in South Africa because we've got what we call freedom of testation.
Okay.
Wherein you can benefit anyone. We even talking your neighbors or your dogs or your yes, you can do that, or even your churches. Some people do that. They benefit the churches, and then you'll find that he's got children, he's got a spouse, but then he decides, no, I love my church very much, or I can even go to an extent of benefiting my medical aid gems.
Wow.
And yes, and it will still be a will and a valid will.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I could just see the Jack Russell driver PM and father. Yeah. 0800 142 446 0800 142 446. Lebone, good evening to you. Lebone, good evening to you.
Ntate ke kopa o botsa hore mohlomong ha motho kile wa etsa di-ambulance
like with a team or with an organization meeting. These are and they are registered for something. I can understand.
Okay, that's a very interesting question. Thank you so much, Lemone. We'll definitely talk about it. Like Radio Timbisa or Timbisa Community Radio, we really appreciate your partnership. This is a very interesting one. Here, I think we're talking about this thing. You know when you've got ideas and what you copyright type of thing. Intellectual property. Okay. We're dealing with heavy names. Yeah, I'm telling you now. Intellectual property, can it be part of the will after registration?
Okay. Right now, what we see from our legislation is that what you can have there, you firstly have to have it and define it as an asset. If you can define that as an asset, then it is an asset. If you can't define it as an asset, what my answer is, it would depend. If perhaps you still have an idea that you've just registered, is it an asset? So if it is an asset, yes. If it's not an asset, it can't.
Okay, but now, hang on. So how are we going to find out if something is an asset? Well, is it up to you, or is it up to the legal definition of an asset?
It must be able to generate income. You must be able to benefit from it.
Yes.
From that idea, from that intellectual property.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the definition that we're working with here relates to assets, and you can't have, we normally use words like commercial value, if something is of commercial value. And those are some of the things that would first be looked at. So she's right. We will have to, if it brings in some form of income, it is not just a registered idea. Because if it's just a registered idea, who are you going to benefit with that?
All right.
Do they really want that idea? So the main thing here to remember is that it should at least be an asset.
Okay. So it's very interesting, this part, it must generate income. Where I actually want to ask, generating income as it exists, or generating income as it's going to be sold, for instance. Do you get what I mean? If it's a business,
yes.
It's a business, obviously it will stand. Okay?
Yes.
But if, say, it's a car which can be sold, or anything that can be sold.
Okay.
Is it along those lines?
That is an asset.
Okay, so
Yes. There's commercial value that you can attach there.
Right.
Yeah, and I can give an example of some people are getting royalties.
Right,
yes. So those are assets. We define them as assets because they'll keep on generating income even when the person is gone. But then if ever that idea of yours, even if you've registered it, but then when you pass on, no one is going to go on with that idea of yours, then we cannot regard it as an asset as such.
Well, this is very interesting, because just the other day I was reading up on issue of Michael Jackson and the fact that he bought some of the Beatles working catalog.
Okay.
So it means after he's passing, those are assets, and they can be put into a will. The Beatles catalog, and all of that stuff. But if they were just there and they cannot bring in any form of income,
if they don't have that commercial value, then
you see, that's how we get educated. I love it. 27 before 7 o'clock. 0800 142 446. I would like to hear from you. My name is Karabalans. Thank you so much if you've just joined us this evening. This is our Let's Talk Justice show, Live Your Rights, and it happens every Thursday. If this is your first time, well, a couple of weeks back we've started this, but you haven't lost out on too much. You have lost out on a bit, but not too much. But if you want to catch up with us, you can hook us up on Twitter and Facebook, but most importantly on YouTube to catch up on the past programs that we've just had. So we would like to welcome you to the show as well. 0800 142 446. Let's go to Richards Bay and we chatted to Mkwanazi. Mkwanazi listening all the way from Richards Bay. Sabona Baba. Where Baba Mkwanazi? Baba Mkwanazi, good evening to you.
Hello.
Ngiyakuzwa ke manje. Baba Mkwanazi kunjani?
Yeah, ngikhona mfowethu.
Ngiyaphila, umbuzo wakuthini?
no umbuzo wami ngisayazi ngathi akade sibonge nje uhlelo liyasiza kakhulu lubaluleke ngendlela ongazibona ngikaba nayo lenkinga ukuthi ngifuna ukudraw iwill so inkinga yami yabasekutheni abameli babiza bengafisa ukuthi ngihamba ama listeners nowachazela kahle hle ukubaleka kohlelo lokho iwill uyidweba kanjani nganoba mawusuthi uya kumeli wathi ufuna 2010 rand so bathi ngihambe ngiye lapha kwa-legal wise bathi bafuna umuntu mhlawumbe seniminyaka esekhulile cishe abantu abahola impesheni so ngagcina senginenkinga-ke manje asengisuka kumnyaka sengitshele ukuthi hayi bo into engangisiza ukuthi ngihambe ngiye ebhenki noma yiphi nje ibhenki osuke ulokhu ubheka kuyona uyakwazi ukuthi uthole uhlelo ukuthi ma basize ngewili uyidrowe khona ngigcina-ke ngikuyilowo process leyo kuzezenhlelo ukuthi ngikwenza ngakuyenzeki kumanje kodwa ngifuna ukwazi kunini ukuthi ngathini kupossible kangakanani ukusiza kangakanani ekutheni mhlawumbe uyenze ngohlelo lwasebhenki ngoba namabhenki onke namabhenki ayayenza iwili futhi ngemali ephansi hhayi le mali eziyigaxa le eyayifuna ubameli ngilalela ikhwezi lilapha eTranscorp umsaze ngolalelayo.
Siyabonga baba Mkhwanazi ulaleli ikhwezi FM. I really appreciate you guys, the guys under Peter Rice's leadership. I really appreciate you being part of the show this evening. Let's go to Mdeni and we're chatting to Tebogo. Tebza.
Hello.
Le guy.
Yes,
is actually mending the camera this evening, so somebody can relate to you. What is your question?
Mama, we did say, we did say, I'm saying we did so. Make it a total we did a bank. So, the quarter of the whole, I took a bank, and then, like, retrieve another motivation. So, the quarter of the whole, can qualify a car, Nally, and one motor, okay, Ushop, bring it to really two. So, I'm very much really can.
Okay, but let me just get, before you go, you want to find out how to like qualifier for what?
Ke wa tsotse go ana anka ke yone the right place ina ka ke gone o tlhokofetse mosadi mo. So what tsotse which step ke something ke seng ke form.
All right, to go and find out, go banking or what is the will entailing.
And then le go ke tsayang le go ke no thola access go ke ba le tsone di letter of authority.
Okay, 100%. Debza, thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, 0800 142 446, 0800 142 446. Two listeners coming from different parts of the world. The other one down in the coast, Richards Bay. The other one right here, Gumosowe to Gomdeni. And having almost the same questions. It's very interesting. All right, let's start with the one, Etoleam Foundation. All right. Banks, as far as drawing up a will, how does it work?
Yes, the banker, yes, they do draw up wills, and then most people even prefer the banks because those are the first institution where we go to once a person pass away.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean that's where we'll think, okay, this person's money is kept in the bank, so we want to go and check how much is there, and then how can we access it. That's where you'll get to discover that, okay, in fact there's a will. So you have to first the will be checked, and then see if ever you are one of the beneficiaries or who's the executor, and they'll advise you accordingly, and depending on who is the executor, then they'll advise you to go and get the executor so that they can give him or her all the information. And in most cases, banks they advise, or maybe should I say choose to be the executors in most of the wills they've drafted. Then once they are executors, then they are the ones who are going to come to our office, and report the estate. Right. And that's where they'll only ask for information from you, things like the death certificates, the IDs of the kids, if ever there are kids, and then all this other information which they do not have, and they'll prepare the documents and bring them to our office. Then we will prepare the necessary letter of appointment, and issue it to the bank.
Sounds great. Dr. Caleb, now when it comes to issue now that I know the banks can do a valid will, all right, so now Hagaba approach to go and find out where do we go from here type of thing. What's the process there?
Is this now the process when you want to now start drafting the will, or
this is the process after the will has been drafted by somebody who's passed on? Maybe now I'm the one that's left behind. Maybe a child, the other person. What do I do?
One of the first things that is important is that at least you should know which bank it is.
Right.
You go there. They have this section that is called the trust section, if it is a bank. And that's when you will obviously introduce yourself, and it would also be important perhaps to carry the death certificate of the person, the testator, that is, to carry their death certificate so they can easily identify who we are referring to. Probably also have your own identification, and they will also obviously look it up and see if they can speak to you. And if they can speak to you, then the process will start there. Normally, they would even complete the necessary documents that would go to the Master of the High Court, just to shorten the process.
All right, Patrick, I'm coming to you now. I can see you calling from Vugani FM down in the Eastern Cape. I'm coming to you now, Pat. Just give me 1 minute quickly. I just want to sort this one out here. Now, in a bit of a problem, which I would like to believe Hori can help me out with. Isn't it a risk that anyone, or how does it work? Can anyone approach the bank and say, we understand who really are, the deceased is here with you guys, find out what's the contents to that will. I would like to find out what the will has. Who does that? Must it be the people that are listed in the will, or anyone can go find out what the will says?
Well, a situation like that obviously is not really regulated, but what normally happens is that the bank gets to be in communication with at least one of the people that are interested. That would either be, if it's not them taking, that is the bank taking the executorship, whoever is nominated to be the executor, they will contact that person or one of the beneficiaries.
Beneficiaries,
yes, only. Because normally you would find that the beneficiaries in a lot of instances do not even know the existence of the will.
Yeah.
Yes. So the situation of walking in, as the lady called, with the knowledge that there is a will does happen, but it's not really regulated. The only thing that would have to happen there is for the bank to verify who they're speaking to.
So basically it goes back to Ishiakore. If you're going to draw up a will, just let somebody come on to know. Or I'm just trying to think, because it kind of gets complicated.
It could help.
Can I come in there?
Yeah, please.
It's actually advisable for you to at least tell one of your people who you are staying with that, okay, after especially if I can say maybe the person who's a beneficiary there.
Yeah.
Yes, and say, okay, yes, I've got a will in such and such a place, so that when you pass on, then they don't have to run around not knowing what is happening, because at times you do find that people do report estates interstate, and only to discover at a later stage that actually there is a will. Then you'll find that at that time probably we've appointed an executor, and maybe he managed to access some of the benefits, some of the funds. So yes, it's advisable that people should at least tell that
I heard
has been transferred.
I heard you mention a big term which I would like to come back to once we've taken a caller: interstate. When you said interstate, you want to feel the highway to America and the top of it. All right, let's go to Vugani FM. Thank you so much, guys. Vugani FM, all the way out in the Eastern Cape. I really appreciate you. Patrick is listening from there. Patrick, good evening to you. The guy now. Angabona lesasengabele sikshijil gwile.
Akebe kwa wena ubuthi namde heritage month ngoma sispeak.
No ndizothetha xa ufuna ithetha ndizothetha.
Must speak athetha masimo.
Kaloku mina ndiyathetha all these languages.
Okay, kebi ndiyabulela mhlobam ngetopic emnandi kangaka. Kebi ndinemibuzo nje mibini wathi mhlobam endifuna assist kuyo. Akuqala phaya ezilalini in the rural areas kunabantu pha abane assets abanazo, but then not mhlambi aware uba mhlambi ziwetha kangakanani, umzekelo livestock kwakunye inkomo, izimvu nendondondondondondond. Mhlambi i-guests zakho, how best they can advise abantu abanjalo mhlambi, because we find that utata uyasweleka ebengenamali ebengena-expose abantu they always xa kushilo nge-will bahlale becinga ngemali uba i-will is the money, it's rand and cents, what is in your bank right now, other than to say what you have.
Right.
Mhlawumbe how best they can advise such people mhlawumbe abane livestock but they're not even having a will. Then my second question, KB, is out in how then do I know that my will it's legal valid? And ndazenjani ke ngoba le will yami ke ngoba isemthethweni futhi if ndiyasweleka definitely is safe abantu bafakile will but they're going to benefit kuyo le will. And my last question into kubana mhlawumbe le will xa sele ke ngoku ndidraftile, when do I keep it making sure that mhlawumbe is safe? Enkosi KB nizamamela kwiVukani FM.
Ndabulela Patrick, listening from Vukani FM. Let's go to Mama Baso from Kwampandu. Mama Baso. So ifake ebondeni.
Yebo sawubona.
Ngifake ebondeni. Ngicela uvala umsakazo wakho ma.
Yebo.
Awuzweki.
Mina bengicela ukubuza ukuthi ayikho inkinga mhlawumbe uma uzibhalela elakho iphepha ekhaya. Ulubeke mhlawumbe ukhombise lowo muntu loyo yedwa uthi mangishona yonke into yami ngiyibhalile lana. Mhlawumbe leyo nto angeke izibe nankinga ingasebenziseka njenge William engizenzele yona.
Ngiyabonga wema. Ngiyabonga. All right, 15 after, just before 7 o'clock, 0800 142 446, 0800 142 446. This is the time where I say good evening to you, Samona. Samona is one of the producers that's handling the social media aspect of things this evening, and I would like to hear from Samona what we have. Do we? She's pointing, she's like, I know you do have. All right, I'm going to be taking some of the Facebook and Twitter messages in a short while, but before we do that, let's answer some of these questions. Patrick says, here's an issue, very interesting one, that's got to do with fellow brothers and sisters living in the rural areas. Now, they were talking you know, we're talking land even. We're talking livestock even. You know, not necessarily rands and cents and the Beamer, Lady Merc, you know, Lady Land Rover and all of that stuff. So now, when it comes to issues like that, how best can you advise people, Babanale, those type of assets? There we go. I've learned a big word this evening. Babanale, those type of assets to actually make sure those assets are secure. They go into a will, and eventually, when they do pass on, you know, they get distributed as they want. Ms. Cecilia?
If we're talking of livestock, Ntate was saying it's not easy to like, I mean, value a livestock, but then to me, I mean, you can value a livestock, and we regard a livestock as an asset. So with a livestock, you can still put it in your will and say my livestock, and then you'll have to like explain that your livestock. The thing is, I mean, you won't know at the time of death how many will your cows be, how many will they be. And yes, you can like put a clause in your will and say I bequeath my livestock to this to this person, and things like those.
All right, Caleb.
She's correct. We did touch on this earlier on about anything that would basically be part of that will have to be an asset. So if you look at livestock, as the gentleman that called in, he wanted to know if that could probably be part of the will, and the answer is yes, it can, because as we defined asset a little bit, we tried to say it should be something that has some sort of commercial value. There we go.
And then issue the validity, the will itself. If somebody says draftly a will, or it's valid, and maybe the queries somewhere.
Yes.
And how do I actually even approach the courts to say it's valid, but we've got problems, and I'm a court as if there's problems with that.
Okay. Now, the first thing it's that the will must be a document. It should have at least two witnesses that are of who are mentally sound and who are at least 14 or older, and they should sign as witnesses both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And if it consists perhaps of more than one page, then the testator must sign each page. But the principle is that they can sign anywhere on the other pages, but on the last one they must sign at the bottom, at the end of the will, basically, wherever it ends.
All
so
right.
At the end of it.
I wonder if there's an example here, Willie, that we can actually put on Facebook, Simona. If there is an example of a will, perhaps sample of it that we can put on Facebook. I would like us to do that for our listeners to at least have a look at a sample of it, of how it looks like. So now, we've had a caller who wants to know, coming again to this type of question, if I draft my own thing,
yes,
I tear up a page, I'm not worried, you know, A4. Shapara, Kenya Deitira, you know, Gangwala. Does it have to, first, is it right to do that?
Yes. You can draft your will through typing it or handwriting.
All right.
Doesn't have to be typed. You can actually write it out with your own hand.
But if we went with your own hand, yes. I mean, I don't know about the logo, I don't know about the practice number, I don't know, you know, all those fancy things. Do you have to take it to the police station for the stamp and all of that stuff?
Nothing.
Can I come in there, please?
Ngalo please.
Yeah. Yes, you can do that. But then you must remember, as Mr. Gubega was explaining, a will has, there are formalities that you must take into account when drafting that will. What he was actually elaborating are the formalities. The issue of signatures, they must be true. And again, it must be in writing. And those are formalities. The minute you didn't comply with those formalities, it becomes a problem for us at the Master's Office to accept that will, because we're looking at as to whether it complies with the Act or it doesn't. If it doesn't comply with the Act, we are going to reject that will, and you'll have to now go to court and have it accepted.
All right.
Yes. So that's why we always at least request to our people that go and find someone who's professional, who can assist you in drafting. Because if ever you're going to like draft it and in your house and you don't know and you've never seen it before, it might be problematic, because sometimes you find that even the part of signing, you sign with a thumb or you sign with a cross. It has got implications, because it might end up leading that will to be rejected, and the painful part is that you won't be there to contest and say, no, this was my intention, this was what I wanted to do. So and it will end up, I mean, people will have to go and fork money out so that that will can be accepted in the High Court.
Okay, I'm glad Khorkhonale a set standard of how it needs to look like, what it needs to contain. But I think, like you say, the best thing is have somebody, perhaps not necessarily professional, but have somebody where they deal with these things. If it does ever end up where there's disputes and all of that, at least the will itself, if valid, then we can deal with other things. I'm glad to hear that. Let's go to the telephone lines quickly. Chechela, apparently you're driving on the N6. If you are driving, Chechela, on the N6 and you've got your phone in your hand, I'm not going to take your call. I'm going to ask you to please pull to the side first and then let's talk. Chechela? Levendat. Kite ha ke utlwe he ba re wa kganna ndate
ke tsamaya mo N6 ndate ke a Gauteng ke tla East London.
O berekisa hand free set how
N6 set ndate
a utlwe he ke thabela utlwa. We can now talk potso ha o re ndate Shishela
ndate ne ke botsa mmele ndate mono wana ha wili ntswe eba motho executor o kgethuwe ke mofu e be ba mohlomong ka tsa sa mabaka a mahakire mohlomong a mosebetsi gore executor a se kgone go tla hlokomela na mohlomong le beneficiary e ba o under age. Na ke boikarabelo ba executor kapa ba lawyer ga go kgetha executor e nngwe na. Hape potso e nngwe ke ya gore na go nka nako e kae mohlomong gore lawyer ga e kenye wili tshebetsong ha ke re mohlomong o ntse wili mofu wa hlokahala ana le wili hore di kabo tsa bo mafa jwalo di tla di etswe ka mora nako e kae.
All right, okay. Please drive safe on the roads there.
All right.
I'm going to urge everybody who's trying to call in and you're driving, please practice caution. If you don't have a hands-free set, just pull to the side before you make that call. I would really appreciate it. The minister was not happy really with regards to the increased number of people that's passed on. In fact, even President Jacob Zuma has said something about it, and the nation was quite shocked with the number of deaths that we have over the past week. So I just want to urge you, if you're driving, practice some caution, pull to the side if you don't have a hands-free set, and then you can make that call. Tabiso, you're calling from Postmansburg. My word. Tabiso?
Eta Bruce.
Eta?
Go siamela man.
Leke prayaga.
Ya, bro, ke tlo go botsa potso engwe. A ke tlo go botsa ka because di ya wili mo mepo mo ya re tshwenya rona batho ba re bereka mo di mine.
Right.
Ke batla go itse gore why go sa fetile molao wa wili e tlogele go nna secret. Lebaka la ka ke e ka re tabe ya wili e gatelela banyadiwa ga tswa ntlhaloganya ke re banyadiwa like the wives tsa rona e ka re di a gatelela o kom kry ka go dira wili go thokwa ke tsa go dira wili mama ka o kry percentage go godimo motho ke monyetsi yo mponetse bana a ba kry like 35% mama ka ena a kry bo wa bona bo 65%. This thing ya wili ke sa change gore ha ke go dira wili mosadi o ke monyetsi nkampo motho ke nang le bana lene a nne presently ha o lene a kgone go bona gore go diragalang ka taba wili e ke ska be ka go direla go se phiri go teno wili ke se phiri sa ka ke nna ke bona gore ke tsenya bo mammo go yona wa lemoga.
All right, we'll talk about the secrecy will and how we can deal with it. It's going to be interesting. Thank you so much, Tabs.
Thank you, Bruce.
0800 142 446 0800 142 446. Mpoza, you're calling all the way from Limpopo. The last time I was in Limpopo, it was 2 days ago. President Jacob Zuma, they officially opening the Unit 6 Yamirupi power station, and hopefully, that will curb the 11 the power outages that we have. So Limpopo, quite a nice place. I really enjoyed myself there. Mpoza, are you calling from there? Which part of Limpopo are you calling from, Mpo?
Hello.
Hi, Mpo.
Hey, Lugai.
Rutene kaina?
Au looking.
Utlweletse radio station e feng ko Limpopo?
Ko
Botlokwa. Thank you so much. What potso ha we reng?
Yeah, be ke nyaka tseba hore na if I get you saying will ke tshwantse ke appointe motho wa gore e ke tsamaila gono o difuta the asset tax.
Yeah.
So I just want to know what the very same person who ke mo appointa ke tshwantse ke mo patele or ona le a share tshwantse ke mo fiele ona within that will now.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I'm not an expert on that, but I can tell you no. But will he? Oh, I'm getting a look. I might have said something wrong. Okay, I retract my statement. No, Gadala, you. Okay, let's take a look at some Twitter questions before we answer some of these questions that we've had. It's already 2 minutes before 7. I'd like us to hurry up and try to accommodate everybody that we can. All right, we've got a question coming from Sfiso Ngwenya. Sfiso, thank you so much for getting hold of us on Twitter. Can you claim a property or estate that is without a will but of the same family? I would like you guys to note that. We're going to come to that question. Can you claim a property or an estate that is without a will but Elia, the person of the same family? Like for instance, Ngatlima, some of the assets that are, say, my father, but asna willy. That's what basically they mean. And then we've got another question from Usiba Nonwati Luka Izim Tebele. This is one of our popular listeners. Now, they say, is it possible to draft a will without consulting my soulmate or my wife? If I have a child out of wedlock, how do I make it possible for my son to be one of the beneficiaries from the will? Thank you so much. That's Usiba listening from Kanya Community Radio in the Eastern Cape. And the last one coming... All right, okay, now this one we'll just put aside for now. All right, so let's start there and then work our way backwards. Quickly, say, Twitter. The first one, can you claim a will or an estate without a will? Can you claim property, I beg your pardon, or estate that is without a will but only of the same surname?
Oh, yes. There is in our law legislation regulating that. It's interstate law of succession, and it has its own requirements as well. The law is such that the deceased would have to be looked at. We look at the background, how many kids they have, if they have a spouse, and those would be the people that would be rightful to can claim. And it also depends on how big the estate is as well. Because now if you have an estate that is below a certain amount, normally the surviving spouse would take everything. Mm-hmm. Now, that's the one of the principles basically coming out of that act. That is the interstate law of succession. And there is something that we call a child share. I can just do this by way of example. Say we have a husband and wife, and they have kids. Husband perhaps dies without a will. And then we look at the value now of this estate, and that's the act says that we the principle now of child share. We look at right now the tariff has changed. It used to be 125, but it actually is still 125. Sorry,
125.
250. Now it's 250.
250 what?
250. No, 1,000.
250,000.
Yes, right, from November.
24.
The 24th of 2014.
Right.
So the child share would then we look at that amount, we look at the entire amount, then we say the child share is determined by dividing the number of dependents plus the spouse. Say
also there's a formula. Yeah.
Yes, it's a formula.
Mm-hmm.
Then should we get an amount after the division has been done? If we get an amount that's below that 250. Then the surviving spouse gets the 250.
All right.
If we get an amount that is above 250, then the surviving spouse is entitled to that amount.
All
so
right.
it's either the child share or 250, whichever is greater.
All right.
Yes.
Here's an interesting one. Usi Bakari wanted to know if it's at all possible, you can draft a will without consulting your soulmate. I'm sorry, Usiba, but all right, without consulting your soulmate. That's the number one question. Number two, he wants to know if you have a child out of wedlock, how you make it possible. That one you've answered now. I think you have. But let's deal with this one. Yeah, is it possible to draft a will without consulting your...
Yes.
Why would say Caleb? No, hang on. Caleb, why are you laughing? Let's start there. Caleb, you're getting some interesting questions, hey?
We did a little bit touch on the principle as such, but I will reiterate. Ms. Mpila here did mention the freedom of gestation. That is, our applicable law at the moment. So there is no wrong or offense in drafting your own will without anyone knowing about it. Because here we're talking of assets that actually belong to you. So you choose how you want to deal with those assets, or how those assets should be dealt with at your demise.
Okay, let me throw a spanner in the works there. I get an issue in community of property.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is that equal sharing of assets after divorce.
Yes.
But now, what happens if somebody's married in community of property and they happen to pass on, and in the will they state nothing, not leaving anything behind. Story tell us TV just paid,
Okay. Yes. Mr. Kubega is right. You can actually draft your own will even if you are married in community of property. I can deal with my share.
Or
My
the portion of your 50%.
Yes,
Okay.
my 50% share. And like specify that in my will, these are the people who are going to inherit. I might even exclude my husband and say my husband is not going to inherit in my will. But then the tricky part in the whole thing is that he is still entitled to his 50% share. Before I'll be dealing when I draft that will, I'll be only dealing with my 50% share. Then his 50% share will be secured. It won't form part of that the one that I'm going to distribute to my beneficiary.
Makes sense.
If I may add there.
Yeah.
Procedurally, what happens is that we would consider the marriage before the will. So we would basically note that there is this amount that does not belong or form part.
And then that gets excluded. Yes. All right. Mpole Tabiso, Mpo wants to know, when you choose an executor, do you pay them now? Tabiso now wants to know, why does it be a secret? Can't we just all get along?
We have freedom to can draft these documents without anyone knowing about it. Yes, so.
All right. Tabi says that's...
Yes, but then I'm dealing with my assets. Why do I have to divulge and tell everyone that no, now I'm going to give these assets to this particular person?
But I thought the Simunye we are one.
Yes, Simunye we are one, but then if I choose to live in secrecy, then I can still do.
Yeah.
Yes, and that the issue of having to pay your executor, actually this one has been regulated by the Act. It is said the executor is entitled to a fee, and that fee is 3.5% of the total assets.
Okay.
Yes, which means, we look at the total assets, and then out of that total assets, we minus the executor's fee of 3.5.
Right.
Then the rest, then it can be paid to the creditors, and then what's left, and then it's a residue that has to be distributed to my beneficiary.
All right. Well, when I'm getting you in the wrong career, you should consider being an executor there.
Yeah.
All right. Now, issue the executors, they were appointed, and maybe other engagements or change of career or something. Who's responsible in terms of changing from one executor to another?
Well, there is no specific guideline as far as that is concerned, but the Master of the High Court, if and when we know about the matter, the person that now wants to withdraw, who was initially nominated in that will have to formally withdraw. Will have to send someone to the Master of the High Court to say, I'm not interested to act as such because of these reasons. Then what we normally do, we would look into the will now and see if there are beneficiaries in there, and if they are we find that there's a surviving spouse or the kids, then we inform them that this is the case. And we look at the people that are beneficiaries as such. We're not going to consider anyone that is outside of that document.
Right.
We look into this document first, and we see if we can get someone that would then be nominated by the others who are benefiting together with that person.
Right.
And then we get to appoint an executor.
All right, 7 o'clock, just 2 minutes for me to take these callers quickly, then we close it up. Dimpe, you're calling from Luhuruti. I'm going to ask you to be very, very short, straight to the point with your question. Zakes, I'm coming to you after Dimpe. Dimpe?
Yes, thank you, sir. I understand very well that to have a will, you must have assets. Now, my question is that my body parts are my assets. Can I include them in the will so that maybe one hospital can benefit out of those, the liver, the heart, etc., etc.?
Good question, Dimpe. Thank you so much. Let's take from Lepalale, where I was actually a couple of days ago. Zakes?
Hello, sir. How are you, Karabo?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm sure you're quite excited about Unit 6 being launched.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, Karabo.
Good stuff, my man. What is your question?
Well, my question really coming to this issue of today is so very much important. I like it. And well, my question is, for all these beneficiaries,
it is necessary that you cannot really do things public, or maybe to do it secretly. And if you do it secretly, I want to know that there is any person who really will do your sins right when you have died. So if there is someone really who can do that for you, and can it be considered for being my wife or not? Or maybe this thing by doing like that, it can be danger to me, that so that all the beneficiaries know that, wow, I have a will now, okay, and the money is too much, I can let my father die or what, something like that.
Yeah. All right. Brazix, thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.
Itara. Just very quickly, I think we've got about a minute and a half. I'm not trying to rush you, but we've got a minute and a half to conclude it. Let's start with the first one. Adimbe. Organ donors put in, one interested in distributing their organs once they've passed on. Can those be included in the will? Can we regard them as assets?
This is a tough one because I can't imagine seeing my body parts as an asset as such, because what is the commercial value that I'm looking at here? But I have seen in certain instances, of course, you are not precluded from doing that. You can do that, but I can't see my body parts being of commercial value. We have seen in many instances where people would actually put in their wills to say what should happen to their body, whether it should be cremated and so on. We have seen that happen. So you have a freedom to do that, but I'm not so. I have never come across anything of that sort. But you're not really precluded.
And question number 6 from Lepalale.
What was the question?
Brazil I would say about the issue of secrecy as well.
Okay.
Issue of want to expose information to other people. Maybe like he said, baka dlala 5,
Yeah, but then even if you didn't disclose that you've got a will, they can still do that if ever you've got a lot of money. So what's the point?
Mm-hmm. All right. Short and sweet. There we go. Coming from Cecilia there. 11 minutes after 7 o'clock, and unfortunately that's how we wrap it up for this evening. This has been a very interesting topic, and I would like to believe that we could perhaps do it in the future. There's so much more to talk about as far as this topic is concerned. My guests this evening coming from the DOJCD, Cecilia Mpela and Dr. Caleb Kubega. Thank you so much, guys, for having taken time to be with us this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting us.
All right, thank you so much to all the 64 radio stations that are partnering with us this evening from all walks of life, from different provinces across South Africa. You guys are doing an absolutely amazing job. We really appreciate it. Thanks to Tabs, camera one in the studio. Tabs, you're doing absolutely amazing. Also, every time I want to mention Ngadimeng, I don't know what's wrong with it. Ngadimeng is the lady that's holding the video unit together when it comes to discipline. Bafana Bahaba Vaile, they do whatever they please. She's doing an absolutely amazing job. But I read you this evening, you see, normally when we do a show, you've got about 2 producers. The one handles technical, the one handles telephones. Now, we are so busy here that we don't have the second producer. Reginald Sanyan is handling all of that alone. And we did not have a glitch. Everything went smooth. Brareji, big ups to you, my brother. I really appreciate it. Oi, and then someone is just drinking coffee. Ana problem. I don't know what's wrong with him. He's taking notes. I don't know for what. But guys, absolutely wonderful job this evening. I really appreciate it. As far as I'm concerned, thank you so much. Let's meet again next time, next week, as we deal with more questions that's got to do with justice. Enjoy your evening.